Hey everybody, I've been wanting to try my hand at making a different kind of content, and I got an idea a few weeks ago. I, for one, really enjoy movies, just films in general, and I remembered a video that I watched by Elvis the Alien. I don't know if you've heard of him. Anyway, he covered the entire Harry Potter series. I found that to be fun and interesting. I liked Harry Potter as a kid. This sort of inspired me for some reason, though. A year after it came out, I had a thought about maybe doing it on the Twilight series for whatever reason. Now, I don't actually want to run by step what happens throughout the films. I don't feel like the plot is strong enough to do that for these movies at points. I mean, I am recording this after I've seen them, but I more so want to see how these movies aged and see why everybody hated them so much back then. So with that in mind, I have seen all of these films. My mom was a big fan of the books, I think, and due to that, I've seen all the films. I think she probably owns them all on DVD or Blu-ray. Let's check out the Twilight Saga, as they call it, and kind of review it and poke fun at how silly these movies can be. I figure they must have done something right with these movies, because the five of them managed to somehow gross $3.3 billion. I didn't realize it was that much of a sensation. But first I should mention, I didn't realize how much of a task it would be to watch all five of these movies back to back to back. You could say I didn't realize what I got myself into. So to the film that started it all, Twilight. And let's add, my expectations are not high for these movies. I'm going to try not to tear these movies apart and poke holes through the story or how unrealistic things can be, though. I don't think that'll be any fun. So yeah, the first movie starts off with our main character, our main protagonist, Bella Swan, I think's her last name. She's moving from Arizona, where she lived with her mother, to Washington, a little town called Forks, Washington, probably doesn't exist, to move in with her father because her mom's going to be traveling around with her stepfather because he's like a minor league baseball player or something. I don't know how they managed to survive off that. I think those guys only make like $30,000 or $40,000 a year, and I'm pretty sure they have to pay for their own travel. I digress. At the start of the film, we get some pretty awkward dialogue between Bella and her father. His name's Charlie. This movie, especially the first film, really does a great job at portraying the awkward and even some, we'll get into it, but these movies are, I don't like to use the word cringe too much because it's so overused and almost sounds stupid at this point, but they've kind of mastered the awkwardness and cringiness in film. I think it might be the peak. Yeah, we get a lot of that until another protagonist in this movie shows up. I wouldn't say he's the main protagonist in the first film. His name's Jacob Black. Now, Jacob shows up along with his wheelchair father, his wheelchair daddy, and they're like selling Bella's father a truck so she can have it or something. Anyway, let's not get too deep into it. Jacob just kind of turns out to be probably the most annoying character in this entire franchise. His only purpose is really just to bitch and moan all the time because he wants to be with Bella. He's like a main character in two of the worst films of this entire series. But let's move on. That's not this film. After that, we then get to head to school, and we quickly get introduced to a lot of different characters that are pretty minor other than the first film. Somehow Bella is able to make friends extremely quickly. Maybe it was because of this.
Hey, you're from Arizona, right? Aren't people from Arizona supposed to be like really tan?
Yeah. Maybe that's why they kicked me out.
You're good.
So moving on, we get to this lunchroom scene. She just kind of sits down with all these new friends that she has, and we get a pretty weird, how do I describe this? I think it's best for me to just show it.
Yeah. My girl.
I don't think I can say the word of what that is, but I'm sure you guys get it. It's just a little strange. Maybe the off-screen they're closer and it's more playful. Doesn't seem like it. He seems like a nice guy, I guess, throughout the series. He's like, hey, Bella, nice truck and stuff. And I think he was actually sincere about that. I don't know, man. After that, we get introduced to our pack of vampires. They just show up all kind of color coordinated. They're all wearing white. It's a very strange scene. They tend to color coordinate quite a bit throughout the movies. Anyway, we get taught by one of the side character friends of Bella that this family that came in is like the Cullens, and they're adopted, so like they're all fucking each other, but it's not weird because they're not actually brother and sister. And then there's the odd one out, Edward Cullen, who's our other main protagonist of the series. For some reason, Bella is just like instantly stricken in love with this man. I don't get it, and trust me when I say this shit was not reciprocated at first. He's probably the biggest asshole in the film. I love it. I'd also like to add that it's really funny watching these movies when I've seen quite a few Robert Pattinson films since these have came out. I mean, even that Remember Me movie that came out while the Twilight series was being filmed, it's like a romantic, I don't know if it would be a comedy, just like a romantic drama. Isn't that bad. The ending's cheesy, but I think he does well in that movie. Then you have like Good Times, which was a complete surprise to me, and The Lighthouse, of course. I feel like he's actually a really good actor, and now rewatching these films, I'm thinking about changing my mind. I guess it's not as bad as how he probably feels looking back at these films. Anyway, Bella finally gets to meet Edward when they have a biology class of some sort together. Edward's just this gigantic prick to her. I've never seen a character be like an attractive character that is just a major dick and kind of creepy throughout these films, at least the first film. I mean, it kind of makes sense for what they were going for, but it also makes less sense when you realize he's like a 109-year-old vampire and he's treating some teenage girl like garbage. Kind of... Anyway, a bunch of boring things happen for a while, with a few funny moments like this.
Well, I don't really like the rain. Any cold, wet thing, I don't really... What?
Nothing.
Then finally, we get a little bit of action because about 20 minutes into the film, one of Bella's friends, the one that did the weird thing in the lunchroom, the black guy, he like almost kills her with this van in the parking lot, and suddenly, Edward, who you see across the parking lot, just sort of teleports to her and smashes the van out of the way like a hero, I guess. Oh, and for 1 second, let's talk about how nice Charlie's mustache is throughout these films. That's Bella's dad. This guy is honestly the best freaking character in the entire series. I can't think of a character that's actually relatable other than him. I mean, he's like the only normal guy that has any type of dad charisma. All we get other than that is like some supernatural hot guys, and I mean, I can't really relate. The only thing supernatural about me is my supernaturally good looks. Wow, if that makes it into the video. Anyway, after Edward saves Bella, she has a bunch of questions for him, of course, like, how did you get to me that fast? And how did you stop a van with your arm? He just continues to be a major asshole about it, and he's all like, well, have you ever heard of adrenaline surges and stuff? It's actually really funny. While watching it, I had so many genuine laughs because of just how standoffish he is. I think it's even funnier because she's attracted to it for some reason. Like this moment here.
I mean, you don't even say hi to me.
Hi.
Are you gonna be riding with us?
No, our bus is full.
I kind of get what they were going for anyway, if I skipped past that earlier. He, like, wants to suck her blood so bad. It's like, oh my god. So... No way. It makes it real hard to be around her. And I think that's what the director was going for. I don't know. I didn't make the movie. I didn't write the books. I can't do that. The problem here is that we get to see all of this from Bella's perspective, and it's kind of insane. Maybe it has to do with like his vampire powers. Maybe he's like such a hot, sexy vampire that everybody just kind of wants him so bad, and that's what's going on. I don't know. We get a really dumb famous scene here.
What?
While our two protagonists just keep getting to know each other, I guess Edward kind of opens up to the idea of being around Bella. Her blood ain't so, sexy anymore. Anyway, she gets asked by her friends to go to some beach, can't remember the name of it, and he's all like, yeah, man, I'm busy, I can't go there. We later learn the reason he can't go there, because she goes to the beach, and then the Indian kids from earlier with Jacob, they, like, give her backstory. Jacob's like, hey, there's a story I'm not actually supposed to tell you, but, like, you know how... we're our tribe, we're like supposed to be coming from wolves or something. Or it's kind of shown that these guys are like werewolves or something, and the Cullens have been around for a real long time for some reason. We get this really gross sepia shot that tries to portray age. Later on in the films, they do some flashbacks to the past that are much better done. You could do all this with costume and sets. You don't have to fucking put a layer of orange over it, but They already threw a layer of green over the film in general, so why not? So yeah, they made some sort of treaty, like, hey, you guys can't hunt in our territory, so the Cullens can't go over there. After this, we get to see the main storyline, or at least the final act storyline, because I don't feel like the movie's really about that. It might set up a couple films. These vampires just start attacking people, or what you assume is vampires at first, then it turns out they are whenever they kill this guy on the boat, which is a very minor character that says something creepy early on. We then go back to school, and Bella learns from the same friend that tells her stuff sometimes that the Cullens don't show up on sunny days. So you're like, hey, these guys are freaking vampires. Then stuff happens, pretty boring. They go like dress shopping or something, and then Bella goes off on her own to go to some bookstore to get a book to figure out if Edward's a vampire. And along there, she gets kind of like ganged up on by these weird, creepy guys. Anyway, weird, creepy guys come. Edward just randomly swoops in and saves her. There's so many moments in the film that make me crack up. It's kind of unintentional, or maybe it could be intentional, but I think that makes this movie really fun to watch. Having Edward try to explain to Bella why he's stalking her, like, can that be more creepy?
How did you know where I was?
I didn't.
Did you follow me?
I feel very protective of you. I was trying to keep a distance unless you needed my help, and then I heard what those lowlifes were thinking.
Yet she's still attracted to him. And finally, due to all of this evidence of him being a freaking weirdo, kind of culminates together, and she confronts him about being a vampire.
You're impossibly fast and strong. Your skin is pale white and ice cold. How old are you?
17.
How long have you been 17?
A while.
This is arguably the most uncomfortable scene or moments in the film. It's pretty silly though. It had me cracking up pretty hard.
You know what you are?
Say it out loud. Say it.
Vampire.
Are you afraid?
He just kind of say it out loud, say it. It's fun. Then we get some really dumb running scenes and like this ugly fast pace, like, oh, he's a vampire, he's fast, and he shows off that the sunlight doesn't kill the vampires and this stuff. It makes them shiny, like real shiny everywhere. It's interesting, allowing them to be in the sunlight and not just explode in flames, I guess. Makes them cooler and stronger, but you gotta give them a weakness. I guess being shiny is a weakness if you want to hide. Anyway, he goes on to explain that him and his family, they hunt animals and survive off their blood instead of humans, which, okay, let's make them good guys. I think he'd honestly be cooler if he just went around killing people and then Bella still somehow fell in love with him. Like, this guy is a terrible person, but I love him. That would be way cooler. And it would be way more romantic that she could get over that character flaw of him being a lunatic. He was already a massive prick. Why not make him a killer?
I've never wanted human's blood so much in my life. Like my own personal brand of heroin.
That scene was too much for me when I first watched it. I had to pause the movie and laugh for a little while. And yeah, then the story just kind of continues down this romance path. They kind of seem like they're together at this point in the film, and they don't have any chemistry in this first film at all. And I really don't mind romantic movies or television shows, like that one show that was on Hulu from Ireland, I think, that Normal People. That's a awesome show. It kind of falls apart near the end, but that's great. And I like some romantic drama movies, but this don't work. Maybe it's aimed at teenagers and I'm too old now. Anyway, Bella gets introduced to all of Edward's family and goes over to their house, which is really awkward. Like,
Pleasure to meet you.
It's okay, Jasper. You won't hurt her.
I think that went well.
there's this implication drawn that because they're vampires and they live forever, they just kind of have to travel from town to town, assuming new identities. And the younger they start out in school, the longer they can stay in a town. Yeah, you could kind of poke holes through that all you want. Now it would be damn near impossible with social media. I'm not really here to do that. I think the idea is kind of fun though. The one that kind of sticks to me is like they can just stack up a bunch of money, and I think that's kind of cool. They don't sleep. They got all the time in the world. I don't know where I was going with that.
You better hold on tight, Spider Monkey.
Hold tight, Spider Monkey has to be. There are so many quotable moments in these movies, but it's definitely freaking up there. That got me good too. I don't think I've heard a more absurd line in a movie in a while. I like that. And I gotta talk about, like, I like some of the shots that they use for these movies, and the music is also really well done for the tone of this first film. I think that's a strong point. I think the soundtrack itself is good. The second movie kind of has a good soundtrack in too, but let's not move on to that yet.
How did you get in here?
the window?
Do you do that a lot?
Just the past couple of months. I like watching you sleep. It's kind of fascinating to me.
Edward then gets creepy and tells Bella he likes to watch her sleep. He just comes over and watches her sleep. That was kind of shown earlier in the film, but you weren't sure. Because he's just in her room, they try to kiss, and because, you know, he wants to suck her dry. I don't know what that was about, but let's keep going. Okay. His urges are too strong to kill her or something. I don't know. So he's like, I can't do it, man. I have always kind of wondered, like, how vampire sex works. I won't press the issue. I mean, it's just the whole blood thing. Like, how do you get blood down there for, like, both of the sexes? Just a thought. Moving on, we get baseball. Baseball happens. Vampire baseball happens. So yeah, when Edward goes over to the house to invite Bella out to play baseball, we get to see still the best character in the show, Charlie. Some of the moments that are written as actual comedic relief aren't that funny because they're overused or didn't age too well, but he's still one of the only characters that is fit for comedic relief in the entire show, other than like Mike, one of her friends from school, who's also trying to fuck her. Everyone's just trying to fuck Bella all the time. Guess she's the new girl. So yeah, we go off to play baseball, and we learn that vampires can only play baseball in thunderstorms because, you know, they hit the bat and it's loud. We get some very interesting quotes, like,
Nice kitty.
My monkey man.
like, nice kitty and monkey man are weird pet names to use. Monkey man. Anyway, the monotony of the film gets broken up when these three vampire people that you could assume were, because you saw them, were killing all the people around town. They show up, they're gonna crash the game, but then the James guy, he's the white guy, then you got the black guy, Laurent, and then the girl, Victoria. James smells Bella, and he's like, oh, I need that blood. I don't get why they're all like that. She's just fucking irresistible in it. I don't like blood, so I don't know. So yeah, we get this chase scene where Edward's like, and the Cullens are like, we gotta protect her. They go back to the house because they gotta protect her from James. Laurent, the black guy, comes over. I think he's like one of the only black vampires in the entire thing. Anyway, Laurent shows up and he's like, hey, James isn't any normal kind of vampire. He'll go to the edge of the earth to suck her. Honestly, kind of hot, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, then she breaks her dad's heart because she has to run away, and she's just a big dickhead to Charlie, and that hurts because, like I said, Charlie's the best character in the movie, and it's not just because he has a freaking sweet mustache. It's just because he's Charlie. Everybody loves Charlie. If I find one person that doesn't like Charlie in the comments to this video, I will kill you myself. That might be going too far, I'm joking. So yeah, they run away to like somewhere else. Might be Arizona or Las Vegas. I don't know where they're going. Go to a hotel. James tricks Bella. Bella's a dummy and goes and meets him alone at her old ballet studio. Family has to fight him because Edward saves her. They kill him, but oh wait, he bit her. They gotta suck the venom out. They come up with some trashy way to explain away her injuries, like she fell down 2 flights of stairs and went through a window, even though there's like these very visible bite marks on her arms. Towards the end of the film, they try to set up this love triangle finally at this prom scene. Jacob shows up, and you could tell he likes her. Sucks bad. I mean, the poor bastard Jacob literally never stood a chance. She, like I said, she just was hard on for Edward since the beginning. Jacob's screwed. He does like take steroids in the second film and get all big, which I guess is cool if you're into big buff boys. To end off the film, we get a kind of cutesy prom scene. It kind of works. It ends with them just kissing and dancing, and then you slowly pan off, and then you see the vampire chick from earlier. I guess she was screwing James, and now she's all mad that he's dead. So yeah, that's probably gonna come back to bite them. There's no way he just did it. So yeah, that was the film. It was a massive hit when I was a kid. It's been a really long time since I've seen this movie, and it was actually very nostalgic to me. It honestly wasn't that bad, especially how unintentionally funny a lot of parts were. I've laughed at this movie more than I've laughed at a lot of comedies I've seen. I think due to the awkwardness and the unintentionally funny parts, it's well worth the watch. I think at that period of time, the reason this movie got so much hate is because it was really popular to hate 2 things in the world. Justin Bieber and Twilight. And once the internet kind of starts to hate two things, it becomes like a fever. Anyway, just purely based off nostalgia, like being a young kid. I think I even went to the movies with some girl when I was a kid to see this film, and that was pretty dope. I probably kissed her or something, and that probably made my life like, wow-wee! A 12-year-old kissing somebody for the first time, that was probably sick. I think I'd give this movie like 7 out of 10 Charlies. We're gonna go with the Charlie scale on this one. I think it's only that high because it's so much better than the other films, some of the other films in the series, and I'm also trying to be nice. But this isn't a bad film. It's not good, but it's not bad. It's good in a bad way. So, good rating. Now, we've arrived to the second film of the series, Twilight, the Twilight Saga, New Moon. As soon as the film started, I noticed it didn't have this ugly green overlay that the past film had, so that's a good thing, I guess. I kind of liked it. It made it feel moody. I liked that moody feel. It reminded me of 2008. I mean, like, pop punk and emo was still really cool. We were right before the scene days. I liked that time period. Anyway, the movie starts off with a fairly common, or a fairly frequent concern of Bella's. She kind of goes out into this field that was in the first movie that keeps reoccurring. And she sees this old lady and she's like, Grandma! But then she sees her as the old lady and realizes, hey, if I don't become a vampire when I'm with Edward, he's gonna look like a 17-year-old, even though he kind of looks like a 20-something-year-old in the movie. And I'm just gonna be an old lady, and that's not hot. Although, if you're an old lady into young guys, it's probably pretty hot. So maybe she missed out on something? This just becomes a big thing where she's constantly pressuring Edward into becoming a vampire. The love triangle that was teased in the end of the last film just keeps continuing throughout this film pretty hardcore. It's pretty much the sole focus of the film. We get to see the Jacob dude, like, transforming into a werewolf, and he gets freaking jacked. I think he gets bigger and bigger progressively throughout the films. Good on him. Steroids can't really help your acting, though, and Taylor Lautner was pretty rough at times throughout this film. At least he looked good doing it. We then get introduced to these, like, vampire cult thing. They're like some underground baddies of the vampire world that have been around for probably a really long time that kind of run things. They're called the Volturi. We're sure to see more of them throughout the films. Anyway, this movie really sucks. It's the worst film I've seen in a very long time. I didn't even write too many notes for this film because there was nothing to write about. It was just, well, they're sitting there talking about nothing. Oh, they're doing this, and that's not really nothing. Oh, this guy's professing his love again for the 10th time this film. That's nothing. Fucking horrible. So yeah, I didn't write too many notes for this film. It's a big snooze fest. I didn't like it. Moving on. Bella goes over to the Cullens' house because it's her birthday, and they give her presents, but then something bad happens when she's opening up this present in a house full of vampires where she cuts her finger. And one of the vampires from the last film, Jasper, he's like this creepy guy that just kind of stares. He can't handle the blood. So Edward pushes her away, then she cuts her arm even worse, and it's a whole crapshoot. It's kind of weird because Jasper was there in the last film when Bella is literally bleeding to death out of like a bunch of different places in her body, and he's just killing James just fine. Who cares, I guess? So after that, Edward takes Bella home. She tries to talk him into changing her, but he's like, that's my old guy impression. You like it? Yeah, a little while after, I don't know if it's that night or another night, Edward and Bella break up. He breaks up with her. He's like the weirdest, saddest guy that's 109 years old and acts like a kid. It's pretty dumb.
I'm coming.
I don't want you to come.
After breaking up, he tells her not to do anything reckless, which is pretty ironic because he goes to do something extremely reckless towards the end. He just sucks. What's love if it's not 109-year-old vampire men emotionally manipulating teenage girls? That is fucking hot. So after the breakup, she gets sad for several months, and we get this novel shot that was probably cool the first time you saw it, of her being depressed in a room, and it's like October, November, December, and like the seasons change out the window. And after that, she just spends a majority of the film just being a sad ass, like, waking up screaming in the middle of the night. It's really annoying. After being sad for who knows how long, she goes to Jacob and is like, hey, buddy, I got these crappy motorcycles. You want to rebuild them with me? And he's like, heck yeah, friend. And you see him take it off of the truck in a sexy bicep pumping motion, puts it down on the ground just so easily. Yeah. I think I'm Team Jacob now. The movie doesn't have too many unintentionally funny moments other than that whole I'm coming, you're not coming kind of stuff. Other than Charlie really carries this film stupidly hard. He's the only person that, he seems like he genuinely cares for Bella. You get real emotion in that sort of way, and he comes off funny in several parts, but it's really only him. Well, the Mike guy kind of shows up and does some funny stuff. All I could say is that Jacob is really persistent, and like an hour into the film or something like that, I think it's about an hour into the film, we finally get something interesting happening. So there's like an hour of just till we get to this. And it consists of the black Laurent guy. I mean, let's just call him Laurent. He shows up and he's like, hey, Victoria ain't happy with you. She's gonna get you. But he's like, you know what? I'll do it myself. And in order to keep our main character alive, these CGI wolves come in and they fudge him up and kill him. After quite a while, Bella figures out that they're werewolves. Get a terrible "the wolf is out of the bag" joke at some point. I hope I can find it. Anyway, Bella does much more reckless stuff for quite a while until she finally throws herself off this cliff that she saw the werewolf boys jumping off. One of the Cullens show up. Alice, I think's her name. She can like see into the future or something like that. By the way, what happened to that actress, Ashley Greene or whatever? She's kind of cute. I like her. She shows up to make sure Bella was okay, 'cause she thought she was trying to, you know, that happens. All the vampires got special powers of some sort in this film. During this visit or after, I'm not sure, or maybe before, Bella gets a phone call to her house and Jacob answers it instead, and all you hear is him like, hey, her dad, Charlie's trying to plan a funeral. Well, now we learned that one of the other Cullens got told by Alice that Bella tried to... Yeah, Edward learns this and thinks that it's Bella because he's the one that called. I'm being convoluted right now, but... So Edward's like, hey, in order to tie back the lame, pretentious Romeo and Juliet reference from earlier in the film that has persisted until now, I'm gonna go do that to myself. Then we get a race to Italy, because that's where the Volturi are. He was gonna go show himself in the sunlight where these people stay. At the last minute, Bella just kind of pushes him out of the way and saves him, but then the Volturi shows up, and we get to meet them. Bella is like immune to vampire powers for some reason, which is why Edward can't read her mind, but for some reason Alice can still see her future. That doesn't make sense to me. They're like, hey, brother, you need to turn this crappy human into a vampire, so he's like, okay, we'll get it done. The Volturi's actually pretty cool, a secret order of vampires that kind of run all the vampires throughout the world, and the lead guy, his name's like Aro, he's pretty funny throughout the films. He's like a creepy weirdo, and I like it. So yeah, when we get back to Forks, the Cullen family has this kind of like vote to see if Bella should be turned into a vampire or not, and they're like, yay, we're gonna do it. We then get a really awkward moment of Jacob and Edward interacting. He's like, hey, Bella, if you get turned into a vampire, that goes against our treaty with the Cullens, and I'm gonna kill you. So yeah, weird way to flirt by telling the girl you love that you're just gonna freaking kill her. Okay, good one, Jake. The movie ends on a cliffhanger where Edward's like, yeah, I'll turn you into a vampire, but you gotta graduate. But then he's like, will you marry me, Bella? With his sexy vampire bod. And there we have it. I think this movie takes itself way too seriously, and it wasn't funny. Barely. I don't know how many scenes I'm going to show in editing, but there cannot be nearly as many as the first film. Terrible film, the worst of the series by a mile. It was way too long and way too boring. There were interesting moments throughout the film, I do have to give it that. It sets up that universe, but I think it spends too much time trying to set up this love triangle. While doing this, it also tries to set up dialogue and drama between these characters in the love triangle, Jacob, Edward, and Bella. We spend a whole lot of time dealing with people that don't have anything other than attractiveness, trying to all get the same girl, and kind of, it sucks. Yeah, I didn't even want to cover this movie in the video because it's that bad, but let's give it a rating. I'd give it like a 2 out of 10 Charlies. Not very good, not good at all. I really hope the next movie's better because I still have 3 to go. I wrote that in my notes because I've already seen them all. Oh, and I put it in the script. Now we're on to our third film of the series, Twilight Eclipse. I thought the movie was going to go into a dark direction because it starts off with some sort of vampire attack, which was kind of cool. In the beginning, Charlie quickly begins carrying the series again. Anyway, in this movie, nothing really happens for a giant chunk of the start, or the beginning of the film. It's mostly just Jacob kind of walking around. I'm Jacob and I'm shirtless, although he has a much better tan than I have. But he's like, I'm Jacob and I'm shirtless and hot and buff, and there's my armpit hair that look red under here for some reason. And he's like, hey Bella, why don't you love me? 'Cause I love you and you love Edward, and why am I still doing this? Both me and the character. Let's put our shirt back. Yeah, we get like flashes to Victoria, the redheaded chick. It looks like she was recast in this film, which is actually pretty cool because she's a lot cuter in this film. No offense to the first actress. Not my type. This one, like alabaster red hair, isn't generally my type. Yeah, we get to learn a little bit of like Native American lore, like the Native Indian guys are like, the American Indian guys are like, hey, we came from wolves, and I don't know if I meant to do an accent there. I wasn't trying to. They're like, hey, we came from wolves, and we get this backstory to their history and being attacked and stuff. I guess I could show some of that. I thought that was pretty cool. And like the more vampires that are around, the more of them turn into wolves. That's pretty cool too. Like there's cool lore here. I just like supernatural horror more than I'd like supernatural love making. We do get like a really awkward scene where Jacob decides to just kiss Bella. And of course Edward isn't too happy about it. So they're out in front of the house and just shoving and stuff. And we don't get a fight, which really sucks. But I guess Jacob can't become a werewolf in front of everybody. So Charlie comes out and he's like, hey, you two, stop this. And that was pretty cool. We love Charlie here. I mean, who doesn't love Charlie? So like 50 minutes into the film, halfway, because I think all these movies are about that 2-hour mark, maybe a little bit more for some of them. I think the last one was the longest. It's just like exposition about Edward or Bella wanting to change Edward to change her into a vampire, and then Jacob just kind of being pissed off about it the entire time. He's a real sad ass the entire time. I fucking hate that character. He does some really weird, funky crap in the end that I really like. It's like, oh, that's gross. He's also responsible for some real weird scenes. So maybe Jacob isn't too bad, but this second and third, God, they suck. 55 minutes in, we're finally seeing something interesting. We go to a graduation, and then they have a party, which is sort of weird because it's at the Cullen's house. Alice has a vision or something, and it starts seeming like there's going to be a fight of some sort that's going to break out. I wasn't really looking forward to it at that time because, like the wolves in the last movie, they looked terrible. The CGI was not good. Throughout this part, we get background and history on the Cullens and how they came to be vampires and such. They weren't doing it in sepia though, so that's good. At some point throughout this, Charlie decides to give Bella the sex talk, and that was really funny.
I mean, you definitely don't want to have to get married because you weren't careful.
What?
But you know what I'm talking about. There's things that you need to think about if you're going to be physically intimate.
Okay. Don't have the talk.
Well, it's just
please.
as embarrassing for me as it is for you.
I doubt that.
Genuinely funny, and they meant it to be funny. That's kind of why we're rolling with the Charlie system for ratings. I think this movie's the Charlie show. And finally, we get some action, because we know about all the vampires we've been seeing all throughout this film. I don't even know if I've talked about that enough. I know I talked about it in the beginning about how somebody got bit. But there's been a bunch of talks about how in Seattle and other places, a bunch of people are getting attacked and killed or going missing. So Victoria has been creating up this like big vampire newborn army. They talk about how the newborn vampires in the first few months of life are way stronger and faster and cooler. So she's been doing that to come after Bella. So the whole movie's just a love triangle and a lead up to Victoria, which wasn't even that interesting in general. So Jacob and Edward take her up this mountain. They use Jacob because I guess he's a stinky wolf man. He masks her smell, and we get a really weird scene here that was uncomfortable and fun. It had me laughing. So because Edward chose a place up high on the mountain, you figure he's 100 years old, he might have any sort of intellect. He's like, oh, I shouldn't have chose a place this high up on the mountain. And then they go and get Jacob to come in because he's a hot, buff vampire or werewolf boy. Hey, I'll warm her up. And he gets behind her and just kind of spoons her right in front of Edward, which is pretty funny. I like that a lot. Not because I have any weird cuckolding fetish, but because it's just uncomfortable and fun. I think the movies thrive in that kind of uncomfortability. I don't know if that's a word. I might have to rate this movie higher just because of how many uncomfortable scenes can be in this film. We'll see though. During the battle, Victoria just kind of sneaks off and comes after them because she tracked Edward, which was never talked about. They get into a big fight. Edward just kind of rips her head off, which is pretty cool. That was honestly pretty badass. I liked that. I think it was a high point. After all that, like the Volturi show up, and they aren't really happy, but they're like, hey, we've been seeing these vampires doing things. They knew about them. I don't know what's going on. I think they have ulterior motives or something. Yeah, they're like, no, Bella will be changed, man. She'll be changed. So Volturi's like, okay, man, we believe you. Jacob gets hurt at some point. That happens. Watching the Cullens tear apart the new vampires was actually better than a lot of other action scenes throughout the films. The wolves that helped them out weren't too bad. I think the CGI was a bit better in this film. Maybe the budget was higher. They didn't really rely on any of that fast, shifty shit that the vampires do for speed, and I hate that thing. It's so bad. So that's good. I think that this movie was really held back by bad melodrama. Like, it's just that Jacob, Edward, Bella thing that's really annoying, and I don't like it. It isn't cute to me. I don't think any of the characters, I don't want to fuck any of them, so it doesn't really work for me. I could rather hang out with Alice, or kind of creepy that I'd say that. I don't know the woman, but women always talk about actors and stuff, so maybe it's not that weird. I don't know. This movie sucks. Bad.
Oh my god, who will she pick? I'm Team Edward, I'm Team Jacob.
It's kind of weird too, that like when I think back to this time period of this Team Edward, Team Jacob thing, you have these characters. Taylor Lautner could appear kind of younger, especially with the rounder face he has, but Robert Pattinson looks like an old guy in these films. He doesn't look young, and the fact that a bunch of young teeny bopper kids, like even preteens, would have been obsessed with him bothers me a bit. So he is kind of attractive, other than his teeth were pretty bad because he's English in the first film. It's all right, I can say that. There wasn't enough Charlie in this film either. That really holds it back. I think the movies that have less Charlie are lesser films. It wasn't a very funny film, but it was better than the last film. So I think I'm gonna have to give this like a 3.5 out of 10 Charlies. Like a 3.5 Charlies out of 10. I think a 4 would be too generous, like much too generous. So yeah, let's go with the 3.5. So now we've made it to the final book. This got split into 2 films for whatever reason. I guess a lot of young adult not fan fiction. Well, young adult fiction was being split when it got brought into a movie. The last book was split into 2, like Hunger Games. Maybe there was another one. Oh, Harry Potter. Yeah. So, the 4th movie in the Twilight Saga, Twilight Breaking Dawn, Part 1. This movie starts off because in the last film, Edward proposed to Bella. And with that, we start the film off by several different characters throughout the series receiving wedding invitations from them, including Jacob. He's all pissy and mad, of course. More of that. Before the wedding, though, Edward decides to let Bella know, like, they're playing on this cold feet thing for, like, 2 minutes in the film. It's dumb. Edward's like, hey, Bella, I'm not the great guy you think I am. I used to, like, kill bad guys. So, that's dumb. That's so dumb. So he's like, hey, we got a flashback to him, not in sepia, good. Hunting down, you're like, oh, he's gonna kill this woman, but then he's killing a bad guy who was gonna, like, go and R her or something. Or kill her, I don't know, and it's funny how you can say kill and not the other word. They're both really bad, but I'd say that death is probably the worst thing that can happen to you. Yeah, you could just say those words, very macabre. That's a weird rant. Let's go on to the fact that why on earth would they feel like putting this in that, okay, yeah, he could have just said that he used to drink human blood. Like, that's crazy. But instead, you're like, hey, Bella, I suck. I used to kill bad guys to stop bad guys from doing bad things to, like, get over my bad urges. Which that's just kind of how you are. Fucking dumb. Dumb. Silly. Stupid. Like I said, I wish Edward was just like a bad guy. It would be so much better if he just was a full-on bad guy. And she liked him. That would be way cooler.
Oh, did you find your daughter?
Are those graduation caps?
Ha! How creative.
Or weird. I know. I look hot.
But of course, Charlie always has our back in these films, so yeah, the boys, the mustache boys. That is not going in the video again. Why do I do shit like that? Let's move on to the wedding that happens. So I think the wedding is actually a nice part of the film. I think the older I get, the more attractive and romantic weddings become. I don't know why. When I was younger, I used to be like, oh, I'm not getting married. I mean, I still think marriage is crazy. But weddings are just, they kind of hold something to them. I didn't think that when I was younger, but the older I get, just the more romantic and kind of lame I get. Yeah. Coming to terms with that is kind of strange, but hey, I'm genuinely me, boys and girls. I don't know who's gonna watch this video. Probably no one. My mom might watch it. Hi, Mom. This whole, like, wedding moment and the romance that happens in this film kind of makes me wish that they would have portrayed Edward and Bella's relationship a bit better, because it sucks in the earlier films. Finally, we get, like, an after-wedding party. I don't remember what that's called. I haven't been to a wedding in a long time. Jacob shows up, and he was nice at first, then he becomes a crybaby again. Of course, it's the same old... It's been happening. Who cares? Fuck off. Die. Dude can't win. Never will. Sucks to suck. So yeah, we then go out on their honeymoon, which they do in Brazil, on this island that Carlisle bought them. So when I talked about how cool it was that the vampires have all this money that they can just stack up over time, yeah, that happens. It's pretty cool, I guess. I'd like an island. I wouldn't turn it into Epstein Island or anything. And then the laugh makes it sound like I would. Pull a real Jacob there. Foreshadowing. Here we get one of the worst green screen effects I've ever seen in my life. Probably as bad as what's going on in this shoulder to me in this. I can't help it. I need better lighting. They get naked and get into the ocean, but the ocean's very obviously green screened and it looks so terrible. It's so bad. I don't know how this made it into a film like this with this high of a budget, but it did. I don't think it comes down to the time either. Maybe I remember that time period of like 2010, 2011 when this came out too fondly, I'm not sure. At the beginning of this, when I first started watching these films, I would have thought that if they would have had a honeymoon and a wedding, it would have been the most awkward moments in the entire franchise, but it kind of works. Bella and Edward's chemistry definitely works a lot better in this film, so that's probably why. And their relationship seems much more adult now. I don't know if it's because they're fucking or not. Just the way they interact, I guess, seems more adult and less like, oh, you suck, boo-hoo. That's not what they really sound like. That's how it is in my head, though. During the honeymoon, of course, they go at it. Edward gets a little rough, so they don't want to screw, because she has, like, bruises on her, but all that vampiric vigor, V-I-G-O-R, I think is how you spell it. Making sure. I'd definitely rather watch a bad romance-like film like this than a love triangle of teenage crying. So this isn't bad. We get a weird break in the action at some point to go and back to Jacob. The acting here was bad. It felt like a commercial break. That's the only way I can describe it. On a more positive note, this movie genuinely got some laughs out of me. I think by intentional jokes, but I'm not entirely certain. So yeah, a bunch of time passes, a big chunk of the film, and then boom, Bella's all of a sudden pregnant. Call people, they're like, oh god, we gotta get this checked out, so they gotta go back. But before that, they weirdly put in this thing where a Brazilian cleaning lady who thought Edward was weird in the parts of the film is like, is the one to explain vampires and humans having babies for some reason. Okay. We then kind of fast forward about 2 weeks, and we show up at the Cullens house in America, and the baby's growing real fast, and it's just absolutely killing Bella. We finally get some drama due to that, like she's dying. Due to the whole dying thing, Jacob comes over because Edward wants him to try to convince her to not have the baby somehow, and just to not die, which makes sense. By the way, it's really off-putting the way she looks in this film. They did a good job. She looks like she has cancer and AIDS at the same time, and seeing family members go through cancer, it's not a pretty sight to see. That stuff doesn't really bother me too much, but it is like, okay, that's sad. After this, we get one of the worst scenes, actually the worst scene I've ever seen in movie or television history, ever.
We have to protect the tribe. What they've bred won't be able to control its thirst. Every human will be...
By the way, the worst scene I've ever seen, rhyming. I don't have a lot of words for how dumb that is. And how bad it is. It's uncanny valley to a maximum. I don't even know if that's the correct word. It's the most uncomfortable thing I've ever watched. I had to look away from the screen. Like I was sitting here on my computer watching these movies and I'm just like, oh my god, why is this so bad? That's me reenacting it. I'm a great actor. So yeah, the Indian dudes are mad. So yeah, they want to like kill Bella because she's having a vampire baby and the whole treaty thing. It's pretty dumb. They could have probably talked it out or something, but they like stake out the Cullen house for a big giant chunk of the film, and all these people are like trying to work together to save them. I think that wolf scene alone and how uncomfortable it was kind of knocks the film down like 2 Charlies at least, but maybe I'll be nicer to it. Anyway, due to Jacob just being a dick again, Edward reads his mind. He's like, oh, Jacob just came up with a good plan, and Jake's just being an ass. And his idea is so dumb, not because it's a dumb idea. It's the idea that we all thought while watching the movie, that a bunch of hundreds and hundreds of year old vampires all in the same house couldn't come up with. Like, these people all have like probably 2,000, maybe more years combined. Jacob, the fucking like 17-year-old wolf kid is the one that's like, hey, maybe she should drink some blood because maybe the vampire thing inside of her wants blood. Oh, wow, who would have thought? So during all this, the blood works out, but Bella's dad doesn't know what's happening with Bella. They've been gone for like forever on this honeymoon, and they're all coming up with a plan for them to tell the dad that she died, which is very sad again. Why does Charlie always have to be screwed over? Quit screwing over Charlie. Anyway, after that, she ends up having the baby, but like kind of dies. This is honestly a really brutal scene. So there's a bunch of sex scenes. They don't really show anything in the film. But then you got like this brutal, gory scene towards the end, which isn't actually that bad, but I didn't expect it in the Twilight film, especially rated PG-13. I don't know how they got this movie rated PG-13, but they did. Good on you. Just when the movie was getting good and Bella died, which I was really rooting for that she'd stay dead, I didn't remember. I don't know why. It would just be like a big wrench thrown into the thing, and I think it would be fun. Jacob has this thing where they talked about how wolves, like, they imprint on people, and they're like, they love them forever or something, and they'll do anything to save them. Well, there's like this weird wolf rule that if somebody imprints on somebody, then they have to protect them. So like Bella's dead and Jacob goes out and he's like, hey, I imprinted on the baby. And we get the worst scene ever where there's this CGI baby face and then she CGIs up to an adult and Jacob wants to fuck a baby, a kid. It had me dying of laughter though, seeing how badly and poor the baby looked and the fact that Jacob liked a kid. It's just so weird. If the Bella and Edward thing wasn't already weird enough, but they look like they could be dating in real life with their age, and I think they maybe did. I don't know. I don't follow celebrity gossip. Oh yeah, since the whole imprinting thing loophole saved the day, turns out Bella probably survived. She ends up like having this transformation, and by the way, when you become a vampire, you just get like a full face of makeup. I don't get that. This movie definitely has some very weird feelings to it. Pretty off-putting at some points. It's kind of scary in an uncanny valley way, like I said. Not actually scary though. That stuff doesn't usually bother me. While I was sitting there watching the credits, I was trying to figure out what I'd rate this film. We got kind of like a post-credit scene, which was pretty funny with the Volturi. I also heard Bruno Mars in the track listing during the credits, and that was a strange throwback. I forgot that guy existed. But yeah, he was really popular back then. Maybe he's made songs recently. I don't listen to that kind of music. After all that, though, putting everything into consideration and comparing it against the other films, I think I'd give this film like a 5 out of 10 Charlies. I think the intro and the honeymoon were boring at times, but the wedding and the honeymoon, they were kind of good, I guess. Not bad. The crazy baby vampire ending, while it got boring with the whole wolf thing, for a bit was actually a cool thing. The climax to it was interesting. Jacob wanting to screw a baby. I don't even know if I could say that on YouTube anyway. They're kind of babies. And also the gory like thing and thinking that Bella's dead. That was kind of crazy. Seeing Edward just trying to give her CPR and saved her. That was sad and cute like that. Sad and aw. Wish she would have died. That's not like wishing ill will on anything but a fake character. So I just think it would have been a more fun second film. Or last film, yeah. I think that would have been more fun. I'm just kind of left to wonder how vampires come. I'm gonna leave you with that one. Alright, we've made it to the 5th and final film of the series. While getting here in real time, while watching these films, I was so freaking happy to be done with this, by the way. I did have fun watching these because I knew I'd have a video to make afterwards. I don't know how this is going to turn out, so let's hope it's good. I don't know if I hope it gets views. If you've enjoyed it, by the way, drop me a like and sub to the channel. That really freaking helps. I think making videos like this is way harder to come up with ideas, but it's more challenging and more fun, and I like this a lot more than just playing games. I like doing stuff just me talking and doing something like more fun to me. So, back to the movies. Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2. The Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2, actually. This one has us starting out with Bella being a vampire. We get some of the worst shots of vampire speed and stuff in the movie, and these CGI shots where she's jumping and you can tell it's not a real person. Terrible. Really bad, and due to this being that bad, I had to look the movie up. They had a $120 million budget on this film. Maybe a lot of that was advertising, but my god. Maybe it was considered good at the time. Anyway, dumb hunting intro and bad CGI baby face again. I don't know why they didn't just use a different baby, because it doesn't matter if the kid actor that you use later looks different than the baby. Oh no. Who cares? I think the CGI kid face will be the death of me. It cracked me up every time I saw it, but it looks so bad for the film. One thing I thought would be a positive for this movie, like a redemption to the first one, was how cheesy it was in the beginning, though. I liked that, actually. So I might be complaining about the cheesiness, but I wish they would have stepped it up at least like 10 or 15 notches. It would have been so much better.
You imprinted on my daughter?
It wasn't my choice.
She's a baby!
It's not like that.
And already you think that you have some moronic, wolfy claim on her?
From the beginning, it was Nessie who wanted me there.
Nessie? You nicknamed my daughter after the Loch Ness Monster?!
What an unhinged quote. That, like, when I said that there were quotes that I loved in this movie, or lines, that is by far the best. I think I may have to use that quote all the time. Why would I be quoting the Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2? That was excellent. Whoever came up with that, they probably thought, oh, this is great. Or maybe they thought, oh, this is terrible. People will love this. I don't know. Fucking awesome. I love them. Just completely unhinged. What a crazy thing to say. You nicknamed my baby after the Loch Ness Monster? What the awesome. So yeah, after that we get more vampire baby stuff and more vampire sex, some hot vampire sex scenes. We then go back to the whole fact that they were planning on telling Charlie that Bella was going to die. So Jacob, not sucking for once in these films, decides to go and tell Charlie that that she's not gonna die. And I guess they don't want to tell Charlie that Bella is a vampire or some shit. Even though everything kind of gets out in the open. This all contradicts with the end of the film, by the way, where the Volturi, like, they have, we'll get to that. We get the best intentionally funny scene in probably the whole series here, where Jacob decides to show Charlie that he's a werewolf, but that just consists of him slowly taking off his clothes in front of him and getting naked.
No. I mean, she's fine. She's back home and she's feeling better. In order for Bella to get better, she had to change.
What do you mean change? What the hell are you doing?
You don't live in the world you think you do.
Jacob, put your clothes on.
Now, this may seem strange. Stranger things happen every day. Trust me.
And it... great. The best genuine laughs in the entire series. Loved it. So yeah, he becomes a werewolf and Charlie knows, and then he goes and sees Bella. Then the CGI kid thing keeps growing up fast. During this, they get spotted by a minor character from the last film. I don't even remember her name. Who cares? She goes and runs off and snitches to the Volturi people about how she thought that the kid they were with was what they call on the show an immortal child. So they thought that the characters and the family were just unhinged also and decided to turn a kid into a vampire to have a kid, when that's not what happened, because nobody knew that vampires could fuck people and make baby vampires or whatever. Yeah. The family then comes up with this idea to go around the world and meet all their vampire friends and try to get them to come help them deal with the Volturi who's going to try to kill them, due to a vision that some girl, Alice, saw. Yeah. During this, while they're traveling around, I noticed Rami Malek, or whatever you say his name. He's a pretty popular actor now. He was randomly in this. That was crazy to me. I think he was in that Freddie Mercury show. That probably grossed a shitload of money. Humble beginning. We get to meet a ton of different vampires, showing off all these vampire powers for way too long in this movie, waiting for the Volturi. I feel like the author, when she wrote these books, got really bored and decided to turn all the vampires into superheroes. I mean, I don't think you really need it either, because vampires already have super speed, super strength, super healing, and they're immortal, and these ones don't die in the sunlight. Just dumb. Why does a vampire need to shock somebody, read their minds, see the future? I get those are like kind of plot aspects, but some of them are dumb. It goes on for far too long. I think that's the only reason I don't like it. And also some of the vampires just have shitty abilities, like Carlisle, the dad. He's just like, I like people. People are good. I want to help. That's his power. Okay. You suck. And then the mom is like, I don't even remember her name. Something. She's like, hey, I show love strong or something. I had to look them up to figure out what the powers were. Nothing. Not even all of them get mentioned either. So vampires that maybe take up 10 minutes of screen time that we just meet, we get to see all them. Like Rami Malek can just randomly, he's like the last airbender and can just bend all the elements. Okay. For quite a while after that, it's just them showing off their skills and learning that Bella has skills and stuff. Pretty freaking boring. Throughout this film, you get teased to the fact that Bella would become a vampire. So you're like, oh, this is gonna have a huge payoff. It's gonna be really cool that she's a vampire, but no, it sucks. Anyway, after way too long and no payoff, we finally get action in the sequence. When the Volturi and the people all line up against each other, the Volturi leader, Aro, has the kid come over and he realizes that it's actually a vampire kid, and he's like, wow, how do vampires come, or something like that. And they all are like ready to kill each other. Due to the baby not actually being an immortal baby, they come up with a different excuse to kill them, and it's like a bad excuse too. They're like, well, we don't know what this baby could be. Instead, they could be like, oh, you guys have done a bunch of dumb shit you're not allowed to do, so we're gonna fuck you up because of that. But that wasn't the case. So then the Alice girl who ran off with Jasper because she could see all this and left notes for Bella, it's a really boring part of the film. She shows up and shows Aro what she sees, and after this we get this gigantic fight scene, which actually wasn't too bad. Even a bunch of main characters die, like Carlisle just has his head ripped off, and the Aro guy gets killed, and other characters we like get killed. It would have been an awesome ending. It would have been cooler if Bella would have died in the last film, then everybody else died, and we just get like a brutal ending that's like, oh, I didn't expect that. We didn't get that though. Because after all this fighting and lead up and cool scenes and so much money went into like the ground breaking apart and shit, I can only imagine. Turns out that was just the vision that Aro saw where he dies in the end that she shows him. So then he's all like, okay, I don't want to fight no more. What would have been really cool though, sucked. Instead, we get this callback to the Brazilian people of the last film. They show up and they're like, hey, this is, let's not do any accents. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't know if I can do a Portuguese accent anyway. They're like tribal people too. They show up and this lady's like, hey, here's this guy. And the guy's like, I too am half vampire, half human. Then they ask him some questions and he's like, when did you grow to full size? And he's like, oh, around 7 years old. And he's like, oh, I can also eat human or blood food. So he could just eat a cheeseburger or drink blood. Dumb. They keep making these people stronger and stronger. And he stops aging after he gets to full size at 7 years old and lives forever. So it's the best of both worlds. I don't even think the guy fucking shines in the sun. Really dumb, lame, boring. Why can't you give these people real flaws and make them suck? The Volturi then run off and we get a happy ending. I mean, they could come back in the future. Not gonna be another film, but
So should I start calling you Dad?
we see a happy moment from Alice. She has a vision showing their future, and then we go on to, like, we see them living happily ever after. I mean, they're vampires, so they are doomed to hell for eternity, or at least that's what Edward talks about all the time. Hey, happy. Bella then somehow has this new ability. She's like, oh, I've been practicing, and is able to show all these happy memories to Edward, which is really just a way for them to have a callback to all the romantic scenes, which weren't really romantic in the early scenes, early movies. It's just showing their relationship kind of go on. I thought it was cool. It's a good way to wrap it up. It pulls at your heartstrings in some sort of way. But yeah, that was the Twilight Saga. I did notice something rather interesting, because when I sat there and I watched these films, I sat down for a little while and I'm thinking about what I'm going to rate these, and I listened just to the post-credits and stuff, and I noticed that Ellie Goulding was in the post-credits. She had a song in here, which I found to be pretty interesting because she's also in a very well-known movie that happens to be based off of a Twilight fan fiction, now revolving around BDSM. So I don't know if that was intentional that she got put in that movie, but that would be cool. Take that for what you will. I suppose that the series wrapped up rather fine. I think this is probably the second best film in the series. The second and third are just so god-awful that the last two may have only seemed good because of how bad they were. I can't be mad with a happy ending. I just do wish that there was a big fight. To spend all that time on a big, gigantic final battle and not do anything was shitty. Thought it was also kind of dumb how they pulled the book out and showed the last line of the book, which was also really... They didn't have good source material reading that last line. Due to the terribly boring beginning, though, you have to... I'm gonna give this film like a 5.5 Charlies out of 10. I think a 6 would really be pushing it, but it was better than the last film. Thinking back to this, I don't know if I'd ever be able to watch these movies like this ever again. I could only do this because I was making a video. Doing it back to back to back to back to back to back, if I did that right, was terrible. I still think the first film is a great nostalgia trip, and I think it holds up better than the others. It kind of thrives in that uncomfortable cringiness, does a really good job in that. I feel like the unintentionally funny moments were probably intentional and they just wanted to be cheesy, and I really liked that. It was genuinely an okay film. I know I'm probably biased though, but the first film's actually, after watching all those, it's a good film. So I think I'd rank them in order, like New Moon, Eclipse. This is from worst to best. New Moon, Eclipse, Breaking Dawn Part 1, Breaking Dawn Part 2, and then Twilight. But Twilight is a lot better than the others. I think maybe the only film that would be worth rewatching would probably be the first. It just has too many funny moments to not watch. It's kind of like I can see why these films could be a guilty pleasure to some people. The story and the supernatural stuff, there's a lot of awful television shows kind of like this that people like. I've never watched The Vampire Diaries or anything like that, but I'm assuming it's pretty similar to this. The acting's probably worse than that TV show. Overall, there were a lot of really boring moments in these films, but then really funny moments that caught me off guard, and some pretty fun scenes. Great shots sometimes, good music sometimes. I think the hate that these movies got was completely blown out of context. Like I said earlier in this video, it just came down to, at that time period, there were two things that were cool to hate, and it was Justin Bieber and Twilight. I don't think they're that bad. The second film deserves to get shit on by a sumo wrestler. It's awful, terrible. The worst movie I've seen in a very long time. But other than that, they're not bad. That second movie. The third movie gets very close to being that bad. Yeah, Twilight Saga. Not bad. My expectations were very low, though. So, that was the video. Let me know what you thought about it. I've never done anything like this. I don't know how it's going to turn out at this point. If you enjoyed it, drop me a like and sub to the channel. Want to hit that 1,000 subscribers? That'd be cool. Anyway, I spent way too long watching the Twilight series and Saga, my bad, and way too long writing about it, then making this. I've been recording for 2 hours, so please show me some love. I'll see you guys later.